Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. Now it's a couple of days late, but I have finally watched the Monaco Grand Prix. Unfortunately, my work patterns for the last week or so didn't really fit around watching Formula 1, and so it's actually taking me watching the race in three parts, which is not a bad thing because the race was sort of cut up into three parts. And it's sort of a little bit too late to be reviewing the race, and so we'll ask the question instead: should the Monaco Grand Prix be saved? Does it deserve a place on the Formula 1 calendar in the future? Because it doesn't have a contract to be run anymore. This could have been the last Monaco Grand Prix. It remains to be seen if the FIA brutally cut the historic race from the calendar, but given their expansion in other countries and their desperation to break into America, it's clear that for them, other races take precedence over this really unique race. And Monaco doesn't pay anything. And normally, to have a Grand Prix somewhere, like Silverstone will pay money to have the Grand Prix there. Monaco doesn't do that. It has special status. But it does mean the FIA doesn't make money out of it, or at least not from that, which is probably a lot of money. But if the alternative is having races like Miami, which, let's not forget, was god-awful, that track is horrendous. I'm not saying they shouldn't have a Grand Prix in Miami, but if they do it again, changes definitely need to be made. But it's still sad to sacrifice the Monaco Grand Prix when really there's nothing like it. Now, it does have issues. There's no doubt that the cars of the 1950s suited Monaco better than the cars of 2022. The cars are wider, it's a very, very narrow track, and overtaking is very, very difficult. In fact, the only really overtakes we saw during this whole Grand Prix were cars on different tyres at the start. There was not a lot of overtaking in the second half of the race after the restart. And that is a problem. Especially when, as we saw with Alonso blocking Hamilton and very quickly dropping 30 to 40 seconds behind the leaders, if you can't get the faster cars ahead of the slower cars, you don't really get much of a race. It was interesting seeing the four leaders right at the end of the race, all within a second of each other. But it doesn't really mean anything if they can't overtake each other. And Perez, struggling on tyres even, was able to hold off the charging Ferraris and his teammate. Which makes for an interesting championship, and I'm very happy for Perez to win a race like this. It's only his third Grand Prix win, and adding Monaco to his wins at Azerbaijan and Bahrain or Sakir, this is definitely the most special track to be winning at for Perez. But the race itself, it was a bit of an odd one, and it was very, very interesting, and it's come with a lot of controversies as well. First, the delayed start. Should the race have been delayed, or should they have been running in the rain? I would like to see them just go, and maybe with a safety car start. I don't think it's a good idea to have 20 Formula 1 cars heading into the first corner at Monaco in the rain, because you have some drivers there who are capable of causing chaos. And the Monaco Grand Prix will be even less interesting if there's only 10 cars racing after the first corner. That being said, even when it started, it was still damp, and the people who did crash in the early laps behind the safety car, Nicholas Latifi and Lance Stroll, who both happen to be Canadian, which is unfortunate, but they are the drivers you kind of expect to crash. Maybe if Sebastian Vettel spun as well, that would have been the trifecta. But everyone did survive pretty much. I mean, Magnussen broke down at some point. I didn't even notice it had happened until Mick Schumacher crashed, and both Hasses were out of the race. Very, very bad weekend for them, and there are now question marks hanging over whether Mick Schumacher will be in that car in the future. It's a shame. Give him more of a chance. I know he's had two big accidents this year, but he's still young and he's still learning. He deserves an opportunity to get points in Formula 1, to definitely see out the season. Beyond that, if it doesn't happen and his performances just aren't up to par, then you have to make a decision. But I think he does deserve another season. So hopefully he gets to see out 2022. And they can decide 2023 at any point in the season. I don't think Haas are going to lose out big time by keeping Mick Schumacher. That being said, I can't really say the same for Nicholas Latifi. He is really I wouldn't even say he's underperforming. He's just not performing at all. He has crashed constantly throughout this year. Williams may be able to do better. I know Nicholas Latifi brings a lot of money to the team. I think he has big sponsors, so I doubt they'd replace him. But out of all the drivers on the grid, I think he, on performance value, he should be the one in risk, and yet Mick Schumacher and Daniel Ricciardo seem to be the ones most likely to be replaced mid-season. This was another bad weekend for Daniel Ricciardo. He just doesn't really seem into it anymore. This isn't the Daniel Ricciardo of old who won at Monaco. Not even that long ago. I think it was 2018, so 4 years ago. Whether it's just that the McLaren doesn't suit him, maybe he just doesn't have the motivation anymore, maybe the team's just not behind him. Whatever it is, it's just not working at McLaren. It'd be sad to see Daniel Ricciardo off the grid, but if he did go, I don't think McLaren would lose out too much. I don't think they'd bring in someone like Colton Herta mid-season. So McLaren would need a part-time driver for the rest of this season. I can't think of many drivers they have who could do that. I mean, you could talk about bringing someone like Stoffel Van Dorn back for the rest of the year. But really, is he going to do any better than Daniel Ricciardo's doing? I think the problem is Lando Norris is performing so well and so consistently. He is really making Daniel Ricciardo look bad. And, you know, to actually get over that, Daniel Ricciardo needs to start performing. I know he got a win at Monza last year, but that was kind of fluky. And, you know, you can kind of argue that that should have gone to Lando Norris. He really deserved it last year. And he is still waiting for his first Formula 1 win. It'd be a shame for Daniel Ricciardo's career to end getting sacked, but relations to the team do seem difficult at the moment, so I think he's the one most in danger of it. Other teammate battles that are interesting are Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, because once again, George Russell was doing... I mean, I want to say he's in a Mercedes and he should be where he is, but considering that the Mercedes is not on the pace of the front-running cars, George Russell's doing a really, really good job. He hasn't finished outside of the top 5 so far this year, so he is showing great consistency. Lewis Hamilton just isn't there, and whether that's the changes just don't suit his driving style, again, maybe his motivation's gone. He's already won 7 world championships, and now the car's off the pace. I bet he's thinking, I should have retired. And every race that goes by is just damaging his legacy, because he is looking extremely average and his teammate is trouncing him. Mercedes did clap back and say that, actually, if you look at the data, once Alonso cleared off a bit, Hamilton was on the pace of Russell. That's not really good enough for the guy who has been built up as the greatest Formula 1 driver ever. It's almost as if, over his career, 90% of the articles that have come out since his career started have been about Lewis Hamilton. Like, if you go on the BBC Sport page, click on Formula 1, 90% of those articles written are about Lewis Hamilton. Because I think especially the British media, I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world, but we have built him up as a titan of the sport and the greatest of all time. And you can't really support that with his 2022 performances, which happens. Like, great drivers have bad seasons. Emerson Fittipaldi, once he left McLaren and joined his brother's team, he was not the same Emerson Fittipaldi. He was not winning races. He was lucky to score points. And he's not the only example. Damon Hill at Arrows. Yes, he won a race at Jordan, but his second season at Jordan was terrible. It happens. And, you know, you can't doubt that he's a 7-time world champion with over 100 wins, and he's broken most of the records. But this isn't a good look for him. And it's going to be interesting to see whether he can bounce back. I did count it. I can't remember how many. I think he's already 3 race wins behind Max Verstappen. So around 75 points. It may be more than that. That is a big gap already. And we're only 7-8 races in. It's a long season. If Mercedes suddenly find a lot of pace and jump right to the front of the queue, he might be able to overturn that. But I think Lewis Hamilton's season is already done, and he's not looking at championship wins. And that's going to be interesting to see what that does to his future, whether he wants to continue beyond 2022. I think maybe the articles once again will start coming out towards the end of the year, maybe suggesting that Lewis Hamilton will retire. Because he got him at the end of last year, but it was obviously due to the controversy. This year it could be the same thing, but for completely different reasons. And the championship at the front. Ferrari kind of shot themselves in the foot, as Ferrari tend to do. This was a brilliant performance from Perez and Sainz. I think they both had points to prove. Great win for Perez. Sainz, I think he's unlucky not to win his first Formula 1 race, and I think he is doing a good job. He has got 4 podiums and he has had his bad luck. Out of the 4 drivers, he's the one who's lagging behind. But I think a couple of good races, he could bring himself back into championship contention. Sergio Perez is having a brilliant year. He's only 15 points behind Verstappen. He is definitely in championship contention, and that makes it difficult for Red Bull because they shouldn't favour Max Verstappen over him. If Perez is charging for the top, give him a chance to do it. Charles Leclerc will be the most disappointed because firstly, he's from Monaco, and this was his home Grand Prix. He had disappointments last year where he qualified on pole but then couldn't start the race. This year, qualified on pole again and he only finished 4th. Didn't even get on the podium. We know he's definitely capable of better than the last couple of races, so I should imagine at some point we are going to get a Charles Leclerc bounce back, get a couple of wins, but Red Bull have really started to pull away a bit. This Ferrari resurgence, it's only been 2 wins. The rest of the races have been won by Red Bulls. I think that's going to ebb and flow over the season. I think we are going to see more Ferrari wins, hopefully for Sainz as well as Leclerc. But this is an interesting title race and is definitely the most exciting part of Formula 1 at the moment. I think this Grand Prix was one of the more exciting races we've had this year, but not necessarily because of the Monaco track. It's just a lot went on. The weather, the race stoppages, you know, the tyre situation. It made for an interesting race, but maybe for the wrong reasons. But do I think the Monaco Grand Prix deserves to be in the calendar? Yes, I do, because, as I said, there's nothing like it. It is entirely unique. Even among street circuits, it is completely unique. And it's an event every year. And even in this race, they're talking about Olivier Panis winning in '96. That race was crazy. And if you go back and watch that race, so many things happen. But it is kind of an outlier because a lot of Monaco Grand Prix are processions. And there was not a lot of overtaking at this race. There was a lot of following. Cars were close together, which is nice to see, but it's, as I said, it's kind of pointless if they can't overtake each other. I think the track definitely needs to change, and I think that's difficult because there's not a lot of room to change. You can't exactly just make it wider. There's a massive harbour there, and, you know, public roads, they're kind of as wide as they are because it's surrounded by buildings. And if you can't change the track and the track isn't exciting anymore, maybe it is time to move on. Monaco will always have its place. There will always be racing there. They have the historics there. Just don't let Charles Leclerc drive around in an old Ferrari. He's not very good at it. But it would be a shame for it to be missing from the calendar. But the calendar is ever expanding. I mean, one day there's going to be 700 races a year, and in every country in the world. And if there isn't a space for Monaco, it is a really big shame. But that's, you know, the price of continuous progress. We've lost more and more of these great old circuits. Like, we don't see the Nürburgring anymore, or the Hockenheimring even. They're gone from the calendar. You know? Don't think they're coming back anytime soon. Really, the last ones are Monaco, Silverstone, Monza, and Spa. I don't like seeing these tracks disappear. If any of them, actually, honestly, Silverstone should probably be the one to go, because it's nothing like what it used to be. Even going back into the early 2000s and the 90s, and it's not the track it once was. I don't like the modern layout of Silverstone. It's nowhere near as memorable as the old layout. Maybe I'm old and it's just nostalgia, but the best British Grand Prix are from years gone by. We haven't had a good one for a while, and part of the reason for that is that the Silverstone track just isn't as interesting as it used to be. Monza and Spa are always good tracks, and they always will be. And if they go from the calendar, I think that would really hurt Formula One. I think you do need at least a few of these really special historic races to go alongside your crazy street circuits in places like Baku, Miami, Hanoi, which we never saw, which is a great shame. I think they should revisit that at some point. And we've had so many tracks like Saudi Arabia and even Bahrain, which has been on the calendar a long time, and we're going to have races in Qatar. All these racetracks in the Middle East look exactly the same. They're not very interesting. The racing's never very good. I know we all talked about Abu Dhabi last year because of the controversy, but was it actually a good race? Not really. And it's going to go down in history that what people are going to talk about forever. The race itself was really boring, and that track sucks. And it always has sucked, and it always will suck. And it's not just in Middle East. We get races in Russia, which are terrible as well. And luckily, for very bad reasons, they're gone from the calendar. But what are they going to replace them with? Just another track in an autodrome that's massively wide, has huge runoff areas, and doesn't make for interesting racing. Whenever we go to France, I forget which track they even use in France anymore. Is it Paul Ricard with the blue squiggly lines everywhere? I hate that track. And even tracks they've been to for a long time, like Barcelona and Hungary, they've sort of become historic because Formula 1 is there so often. We've had a Hungarian Grand Prix since like 1986, but the Hungaroring has never been the most exciting track in the world, and yet it always seems to survive. So someone likes that track. But Monaco, to me, it's still special, and it always will be. So I'll leave it down to you. This is kind of a community vote sort of thing. Do you think the Monaco Grand Prix deserves to be on the calendar? Give your reasons either way down below, and remember to subscribe. I will be talking about the Indy 500, even though it's way too late. Like, the race was ages ago. It's part of history. And I started watching it and I haven't finished yet, and I don't know the winner. So I will be doing something hopefully along the lines of this. Not necessarily a review, but more I'll find a reason to talk about it. Monaco, it was an interesting race, and it's an interesting track. But maybe it is time to say goodbye to it. So, leave your thoughts down below in the comments. Remember to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.